Hey everybody, welcome to Drop Dead Serious. If you are new here, hello, I am Ashleigh Banfield. And in this episode, we're talking about Lori Vallow Daybell. You may know her name. You may know it well. You may know her horrific story. But now there is a brand new chapter that is unfolding. And trust me, you are going to want to hear this. And I want to take a step back too, because to really understand where Lori is today, you need to understand where all of this started. Lori Vallow is often referred to as the Idaho doomsday mom, who once seemed like kind of an ordinary suburban mom, until she became entangled in a doomsday cult with her fifth husband, a guy named Chad Daybell. Self-proclaimed prophet he was. And together, those two spun a real delusion of dark spirits and zombies and apocalyptic prophecies that eventually led to the deaths of not only her own two children, but also Chad's wife at the time, Tammy Daybell. So Chad and Lori gained international attention back in December of 2019, because that's when a press conference was held. Basically, police looking for Lori's two children, 16-year-old Tylee Ryan and 7-year-old Joshua J.J. Vallow. They had been reported missing by J.J.'s grandparents. So on January 25th of 2020, a court order went out from Madison County prosecutor from that office requiring Lori Vallow to produce her missing children in Rexburg, Idaho, and to do it within 5 days. Now, if you have kids, that should not be difficult to do. You could probably do it in an hour. And Lori did not do that. Lori didn't do it in an hour. Lori didn't do it in 5 days. And when she failed to comply with that court order and she did not produce those kids, the police moved in and they arrested her. Weirdly, though, she was in Kauai, in the Hawaiian Islands at that point. She had fled the mainland. She was vacationing there, but they got her and they charged her with child desertion, contempt of court, and they extradited her back to Idaho. So the failure to comply with the court order, that really became a critical moment in this entire case. Because what it did was it reinforced the belief that Lori knew the whereabouts of her kids and was intentionally obstructing the police trying to find them, the grandparents trying to find them, and the whole investigation. So fast forward a couple months later, June of 2020, investigators make a horrific discovery. They find the remains of Tylee and JJ, and they find them buried in Chad Daybell's backyard. Keep in mind, Lori is already in jail at this point, but Chad isn't. Chad was actually arrested the day they found those remains. And both Chad and Lori were charged in connection with the kids' deaths. And I should tell you, these were not just murders. These were not just murders. These were calculated, cold-blooded eliminations of children. People who stood in the way of Lori and Chad's twisted version of destiny, whatever that religious version was. If you have a weak stomach, if you're sensitive, these details are going to be a little difficult. But Tylee, her remains were recovered near a burn pile in a pet cemetery. Yeah, pet cemetery. She had been burned, charred, dismembered. There were sharp force wounds found on the bones. Basically, it looked as though she'd been killed, dismembered, and they tried to burn any evidence of her, but gave up, because a lot of the parts that were in the pet cemetery were actually burned flesh. So, yeah, found among buried animals. Maybe they decided this was too difficult. When it came to JJ, they did not dismember him or try to burn him. They just buried him whole. He was found in a makeshift shallow grave nearby, and his whole body was wrapped in plastic and bound with duct tape. And he was still in the jammies that he was last seen wearing. After those children's remains were found, Lori's own sister, Summer Shiflin, confronted Lori in a devastating jailhouse phone call where Summer can be heard crying and screaming at her sister Lori for, quote, dumping the children like trash and burying them like animals, end quote.
I don't know what anybody knows. I've been in isolation for 2 weeks, so I don't know anything that's going on. I haven't talked to anyone. Well, they know that they found Tylee buried in a pet cemetery and JJ buried on Chad's backyard. And we don't understand how that happened or why. said nothing. Because everybody sees what's on TV. That has nothing to do with TV. This is when you're in my conversations before you left and cut me off. And now you expect me to be there for you and you were going to abandon me? And if you weren't in jail, you wouldn't even be talking to me and we wouldn't even know they were dead still. You don't think that's going to cause pain throughout our entire family? That's never my intent. Well, you don't think I'm in pain? No, I don't. I think you were dancing on the beach having a great time. Getting married. And you took pictures to prove your kids don't deserve a burial, but you need to get wedding pictures? You don't think that's upsetting? Nobody knows. I'm sorry, honey. Then nobody knows except for you and the Lord. Yeah, ask him. I have. And guess what? I don't have one scripture that says it's okay for children to be thrown away like garbage in the ground. And that's okay. There is nothing in the scriptures that is godly about hurting a child. Nothing.
In May of 2023, Lori was convicted of the murders of Tylee and of JJ, and she was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder against Tammy Daybell, again, Chad's previous wife. Lori received multiple life sentences without the possibility of parole, a fate she earned after months of deception and evasion, and also, I gotta say, disturbingly calm appearances in the courtroom. But in true Lori fashion, she ain't done yet. Lori's been extradited to Arizona to face yet another murder charge, this time for the death of her fourth husband, the one before Chad Daybell. And his name was Charles Vallow. And if that weren't enough, there is a third murder trial for the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreau. Brandon is the man who was divorcing Lori's niece. With the trial date in Arizona approaching, Lori Vallow decided to break her silence in a Jailhouse interview with Dateline NBC, and it was even more bizarre than you could imagine. She completely tried to rewrite history, right? By claiming astonishingly that her own daughter Tylee was responsible for the death of her little brother JJ. She even suggested that that daughter, Tylee, took her own life. Let me say that again. Lori, the woman convicted of murdering her own kids, is now blaming her murdered daughter. Lori also says she is 100% certain that she and Chad will be exonerated. You heard that correctly. She believes that she and Chad are getting cleared and getting out. And then she goes even further and actually said that she sees herself on Dancing with the Stars one day, once she's free. My friends, I think we can all agree that words, they mean a lot. And Lori definitely said a lot. But her body language and her tone and her actions may have said even more. So to help me make sense of this Jailhouse interview, joining me today is Scott Rouse. Scott is one of the top behavior analysts and body language experts in the world. He holds multiple certificates in advanced interrogation training and has been training alongside the FBI, the Secret Service, the U.S. military intelligence, and the Department of Defense. He's also one of the hosts of the extremely popular YouTube channel, The Behavior Panel. Scott, you're like my favorite person on this topic because in my gut, I feel like I'm seeing things, but I know that you can actually put like labels and diagnoses to what I'm seeing. Just start with the overall impression, how you see Lori Vallow Daybell over the years compared to maybe how I see her.
You're seeing, it's almost like a narcissist being unveiled. That sounds weird, but when you get her in a corner and it's one-on-one like this interview is, then you're seeing the narcissist protect itself. A lot of other personality things going on in there. I'm not going to try to diagnose what the personality type is, but although narcissism is blatant and everybody can see that, I think these kind of interviews are fascinating. The only thing that bothers me is we can't, they've got her cuffed, so she can't use her hands as much. So we can't, but that still lets us see when her hands are together, we see her adapting, these little repetitive things we do to pacify ourselves when stress
I'm glad you
rises.
mentioned that she's cuffed, because I did think that that restrained a lot of language we would have maybe able to perceive had she
Yeah.
not been. But she was previously diagnosed, and I'm going to read it. It was delusional disorder mixed with hyper religiosity and with grandiose features. This was when she was found incompetent to stand trial back in Idaho. Those are big, deep words, but does that make a difference when you're looking at her behavior, her body behavior, knowing that she's got this diagnosis in her past?
Uh, it sort of enhances what you get to see. A lot of times you'll think, oh, it makes it worse, but they're so big in their, no matter what they say in a personality type like this, they, if they're going to say, I went out and walked the dog, it's going to look differently than a normal person could say, I went out and walked the dog, because they're going to add things to it. And so you get what's called a baseline, where you see their normal behavior. Once you get that and you see how big they get and those kind of things, once you ask them a question and they start being deceptive about it, all that changes, because they go into a different mindset to protect the ego and getting in trouble. So it's really it's more helpful than it is a hindrance.
Interesting. I just still can't get past the fact that, within the last year, she's been deemed incompetent to stand trial. And yet she's defending herself. She is acting as her own attorney. Yeah, there's someone sitting beside her, but it just doesn't stand to reason that this is possible. How are you seeing her in terms of the attorney in the courtroom at defense table?
It's exactly what you think it would be. It's not working, and it's not going to work, because she doesn't know enough about what's going on in the legal world to defend herself. And if she can't stand trial, then why should she be able? I mean, I understand why she should be able to defend herself. Anybody should be able to, but I mean, you're dealing with a personality type that isn't dealing with reality. So she's not able to defend herself in the proper way. That may be a tactic by some lawyer she knows. Said, look, go in there and try to, and put out all this information. They can't use it later or something. You never know.
Well, you know what?
Situations
Like
this.
the biggest joke I think about is that you've given up. If you decide to defend yourself, you're giving up your right later on in an appeal to say ineffective assistance of counsel. You can't do that.
Yeah.
You don't get it both ways. You were given
That's true.
ample opportunity to take the free lawyer that the government will give you. You've been given ample opportunity to switch out that lawyer if you don't like that lawyer. And yet, like, I personally, just as a layperson, I see this as just like the epitome of her narcissism. I can do better than anyone else. I know more than everyone else. Do you see something more than that?
No, it's pretty much, it's a clinical narcissist. That's one of the highest levels you can get. I don't think we're looking at psychopathy here. It's close, because there are a lot of things that are similar with psychopathy. Obviously, with the things she's done, she feels, for what it looks like to me, no remorse. She doesn't feel bad about doing any of that. Still keeps hiding it and laying it on the religious part, but that's part of the personality type she has. So that's how and it's all about the ego and protecting the ego. And that's what she's doing. That's why her movements are so big. She gets so loud and calls Keith all the time. It's basically just a protection of the ego. So,
like they're on a first name basis, which I guess you are. If he's calling her Lori, she feels like I would still call him Mr. Morrison.
yeah.
I feel he deserves that deference after this many years. Let's get right to the clips, because this is where I love what you see. And every time I talk to you, you find stuff that I feel but can't put into words. So let's start with this one. This is a clip where Lori is insisting to Keith Morrison in her jailhouse garb in the sit-down jailhouse interview that people want to know the truth, and only she has it, right? Like only she has the truth. And she thinks that everything else that has been reported, including evidence in court, is just straight up narratives. Let's watch together, and then I want to ask you about it.
Okay.
All right, roll it, Lindsay.
Apparently they have to stay on.
They do?
Go figure.
Yeah. I talked to my hands, so it's going to be a little different. I'm in trial coming up, as you know. Do you know that, Keith?
Oh, I know
Are you keeping track?
Oh, yeah, I'm keeping track. So combative is how she was going to be. Practicing, perhaps. She is representing herself in court now. And she made the decision to meet me for an on-camera interview because she had been telling us she wanted to tell the truth.
It's not fun when so many things are not true.
Well, we'll get to that, won't we? You're the most hated mom in America.
I heard that. And we all know what the media does. And they exaggerate everything and they make stuff up and they twist things around. So I don't know how it became what it is today. It's amazing to me. And I don't really know. And I'm not exposed to what's going on out there.
Are you misunderstood?
Absolutely. But yeah.
Misunderstood how? I mean, how do
In
they get
every
you
way.
wrong?
I mean, how do you know a person if you never talked to them in 5 years? How do you know anything about them? How do you know anything about their life? About how it really is? I hear stuff from my family that's like, oh, somebody does a blog about you every day or something. I'm like, how could they do a blog every day? It's been like 5 years. It's mind-blowing.
No,
It's mind-blowing.
a lot happened.
Mm-hmm. Tragedies in my life. So the media loves to take tragedies and turn them into crimes, turn them into horrible things. And I had a lot of tragedies in a row, like a domino effect.
Boy, did she ever. There's so much there. Just your initial, thoughts on what you just saw.
There's a lot going on there, and we're looking at different sections of time there, so things change in between those times. But when he hits something on her ego, like that one question where she slowed down and sort of balled up a little bit and gets very still, that's when she has inner dialogue going on. And she's thinking and structuring her sentences and what she's going to say next. So that's if it wasn't her talking about her and how, great things were, if it was something about what happened to somebody or something like that, that's when she sort of shuts down and gets in defense mode. Again, defending the ego.
She was good at keeping her hands still and on her lap. Now, again, she's got purple handcuffs on. There's not a lot you can do, but at other times she's quite, agile and moves. But is there anything to the fact that is this self-discipline? Is she trying to keep it together to look credible? Or what do you make of the fact that she just keeps those hands straight down on her lap?
Her life is about keeping it together and looking credible. So that's the main thing for a narcissist or personality type like this, because they want to look the best they possibly can because they think they are the best that there is. Or the best person in the room, smartest person in the room. Everybody should like me. So and when she slows down and she doesn't move much, that's when something's up, because every other time she's moving around, we see her shoulders moving, her head's moving, her face is, her chin's up, her head's back a little bit. But when that thing comes forward and she gets still comparatively, compared to how she is usually, that means that would suggest anyway that something's up, that she's taking in all the information. Watch when she eye locks on him. Quite often she's talking to him and she'll look around some, but when she looks right at him, that's when something's up. I don't know what it would at this point, what it would be, because you have to see the line of questioning in there for those things.
But is that when you lock eyes, is that a dominance effort, or is that an effort to prove that I'm telling the truth because I'm maintaining eye contact with you? Because is it like I'm trying too hard?
Well, let's take that part about the eye contact and lying or deception. Most people are under the impression when you break eye contact that you're the one that's lying. You're something's being deceptive. Yeah. However, what we know for a fact is that the person who breaks eye contact is the one who's thinking. That's the one you want to believe most of the time, because the person who locks eyes with you when they're giving you the answer, or when they've been put on the spot, you ask them the question, they keep looking at you. If you think about it, that's kind of weird. If you and I were doing something and you said, did you drop your coffee over there? And I just kept looking at you and said, well, here's what happened. I was standing and I didn't quit looking at you. So it's natural to break eye contact.
And it's natural to look away when you're thinking, isn't it? Like if you have to think about something, I'm doing it right now for those watching on YouTube, they can see it. But for anybody listening on the podcast, look, it's unnatural conversation you and I are having because we're staring into cameras. But it is natural to look away and think, isn't it? Isn't it unnatural to stare at someone while you're thinking?
Yeah, it really is. Because if you ask someone add up these numbers and, what's 14 times 8 plus 27 minus 3, and they kept looking at you for the answer, it's odd. But the reason someone who is being deceptive keeps looking at you is because their brain wants to make sure you believe them.
Okay.
So that's what they're, in other words, their brain is looking for things where you might look like this, or almost say something where the person who's just giving you the answer doesn't care. It doesn't matter that much to them because they're just looking around thinking about the answer. That's why we know when someone locks eyes with you when you're answering, that something might be up at that point.
Boy, I
There
hope
could
we
be
didn't
people
just
who
give tons of advice out there to people who now know how to lie better.
and the
But you're
thing is,
right.
they can't keep it up. You can do it one
Yeah,
or two times, but you can't keep it up in a series of questions. They'll
that's a good
forget.
point. It's a natural behavior. You're right. Okay. What if you could have a conversation with a serial killer? Actually sit in a room across the table from them and hear them tell the story of who they are, what they did, and why they did it. What if you could separate their truths from their lies and actually maybe hear something that they've really never told anybody before? From the team that brought you Down the Hill, the Delphi Murders, comes Deviant. It's a show that explores the people who blow through society's boundaries, the people who live beyond the margins. The episodes are released each and every Tuesday and Friday, with Friday stories featuring interviews with people who have spent their lives and their careers close to crime. These include former FBI agents, undercover agents, and crime journalists who have covered the most shocking and high-profile cases. Deviant is available now. You can follow and listen on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or any major streaming platform. Let me go to the next clip, and it is about Keith Morrison asking Lori Vallow Daybell, about meeting Chad Daybell. And so let's roll the clip, Lindsay.
Do you remember the first meeting with Chad?
Absolutely.
What was that like?
That was amazing.
Tell me about it.
It was amazing because the veil was once again opened and we remembered each other. I recognized him spiritually. He recognized me spiritually, that we had known each other for eternities.
So when Chad came along and said you're a goddess and you've lived for since the beginning of time, and
Who
so is
said
he.
that Chad said that? Are you saying that Chad said that?
No,
Did you hear Chad say that to me? You've heard a lot of stuff, Keith, and
But
I'm here
what-
to say you've heard a lot of stuff,
what-
but what I tell you will be the truth.
Wow. Okay. First off, let's talk about her belligerence in a moment. But first off, she's talking about the amazing meeting of married Chad Daybell, right? They're both married. Lori's married to Charles and Chad is married to Tammy. And it looks to me as the layperson like she is enthralled with this man and she believes everything that she's saying to Chad. Like, this doesn't look like she's trying to lie. She's literally now all into her own business and believes that everything that happened in her life was all virtuous.
Yeah. If you'll listen to how high she was talking, the tone of her voice at the beginning of that, when she's talking about how wonderful things are, then listen to how far down it goes, how low it goes, her tone gets when she starts talking about the other things when it follows that.
Oh.
That's always interesting too, because
So
you
what?
can
No,
tell.
tell me what does that mean? Going starting high and ending low.
Well, she's selling something at that point. Oh, it was so wonderful. He had the best time and all that. But you know what he told me? He said, and so it's kind of like that. So the voice gets lower as you get more into the series. Let me tell you something. And she's using what is called her teaching face, or what we refer to as a teaching face, where she's telling you the way things are and what happened. So that's why she's always on point. When he starts to talk, she starts talking over him because she wants to make sure she gets this picture clear to anyone else listening. Her point. There's no logic in this at all on her side of it as she's listening to the question and answering them. There's no logic to it. It's just she's giving her answer. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well.
Yeah, well, I can tell that she's excited and that, just the discussion of Chad lights her up. Okay, so you had an affair with a married man, you cheated and you found someone else you liked better, but it was so sinister. Like everything about their relationship was all based on sinister evil. Like, these people are in our way, therefore they are zombies and have to die. And yet she doesn't seem to be incorporating that part of their relationship into this excited part of meeting some guy she liked.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what to add to that. It's just, that's the way it is.
Does that sort of comport with what you see in how she answers Keith?
Oh,
and her
yeah,
excitement
yeah.
about him? Like, is that, I'm saying what I'm seeing in evidence. And of course, I haven't either spent 5 years with Lori. And here I am talking about Lori. She makes a very good point, I have to add, that how can you possibly talk so much about someone if you've never even met them and never had a conversation yourself? I get that. So I'm just going off evidence, but that seems to be the story that I've come up with. And I'm just wondering if it looks to you, by how she's talking, to be true.
It's a great defense to come out and say that, because what do you know about me? You don't know anything about me, that kind of thing. And she may be she may be the nicest person when you hang around her, because that's, again, part of that personality type. They can do all these nice things, but then do these horrific things somewhere else. So what we're seeing completely makes sense. I mean, I don't have any problems at all seeing what's happening, understanding the personality type, and that she was able to do those kind of things that she's been, she got in trouble for, and be so bubbly and nice and all that. It's really not that's the way those are. That's the way they are.
And I like that you said that her belligerence when she's over talking Keith in the second part of that clip we just saw is her demanding that her narrative gets out, which I will give her in her defense. If I were an inmate, and let's just say I were wrongfully accused, I might be that way too. I might want, someone needs to hear me now. I need to get my story out because I don't feel like my story came out at trial. And again, that's just looking at both sides of the coin.
Yeah, but the thing is, you wouldn't calm down as quickly as she does. When you go in an interrogation, if I'm talking to somebody that's done something, I know they've done it, and we're just having to have them say that they did it. And or if there's a situation you come in and you're not sure, you can come in and say, I gotta tell you, I gotta ask you this real quick, because you've taken a 10-minute break during a long one stuff. You come in and say, listen, they know you did this. There's no question about that you did this at all. There's a lot of things going on here you're not aware of yet. I'll hopefully be able to tell you here in a little while. So you did this, and there's no doubt about it. And that's why I'm here to talk to you about that. And if they say, well, I didn't do it, I'll tell you right now, I don't care what they say, and like that, that's one thing. But if they say, wait a minute, man, stop me halfway through that long little sentence I went through, now that's different. They get all mad, and then, but the thing is, anybody can do that, but they're hard to calm down, and it'll hit them again that they're in trouble for something they didn't do, and they'll bring it up again and get all fired up and angry and hollering, trying to make their point to you, because you're the one doing that, not talking about everybody else. But yeah, but I didn't do this. They think whatever. That's a real important thing there, because being able to keep up that anger and that the stress from all that, and then it pops back in their brain, and they'll come at you again while you're just talking in the middle of anything. But the person who did it, most likely, usually, not always, you can't say 100% every time, they'll just listen to it for a minute, and they'll just gather all that information, and they'll keep looking at you like we talked about earlier, because they want to make sure, their brain wants to make sure they get all the information they possibly can for their defense against this situation. So the person who didn't do it is going to be really mad. She calms down fairly quickly, and she didn't really get that mad. She just starts talking loud.
You're saying the calmness is her returning to the methodical thinker who did it and needs to make sure she keeps her, her shit together. It's fascinating.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Let's watch this next clip, and I have to give some information beforehand because it's a bit weird. You hear another name being thrown in the mix. You hear the name Ned Schneider being thrown into the mix. For those who don't remember, long ago, when this story began, like a half a decade ago, there was the fourth husband, Charles Vallow, who died. And died by gunshot, and it was ruled self-defense by Lori's brother. Lori's brother shot him dead, and the police there sort of wrote it off and said self-defense. And now they think otherwise, and she's going to trial for being a part of that murder conspiracy of Charles Vallow. But her fourth husband, she deemed a dark spirit. She said Charles Vallow had become a man named Ned Schneider. And the reason Lori thought that was because Chad Daybell told her so. With that as a backdrop, Lindsay, can you roll that clip?
She's lost her mind. I don't know how else to say it. We're LDS. She thinks she's a resurrected being and a god. She said, you're not Charles. I don't know who you are, what you did with Charles, but I can murder you now.
Are you saying he became Ned Schneider?
Well, that's what he told the police, that you told him he was somebody named Ned Schneider.
Were you there when he told that to the police?
I have a video
of it.
Did you hear it? Yes. He's on tape saying that to the police. He was terrified that you were going to kill him.
Really, Keith? Is that where you're going to go with this?
Well, that's what we're here to talk about.
So I'm not sure how much Lori knows about her trial transcript from Idaho, but there is irrefutable proof that Lori and Chad called Charles Vallow Ned Schneider. and considered him a dark spirit. I'll give you some examples here. Lori texted her brother Alex, quote, apparently it is tied to Ned being gone, kiss emoji, hopefully today or tomorrow. And then there's, of course, just, our lion eyes are telling us right there on a body cam what Charles Vallow is telling the police out of fear that, his wife is acting dangerously. But Lori's response is so weird. Really, Keith? Are we going there?
Yeah, it's defensive. I mean, what else is she going to say? She can't say he didn't say it, or I didn't say it, or they didn't say it, because they have all that stuff. Maybe she does know that. She's just trying to block that line of questioning. That's a common tactic for. And I'm not being mean. I'm just saying people who aren't really smart. That's quite often that's the tack they'll take is that one, the childish approach to that, because it sounds like a little kid he's talking to as she's doing that. Maybe 7, 8 years old. That's the way they argue. That's what they do.
I thought exactly the same thing. I actually was going to go a little older, but about like 11 or 12-year-old, preteen girl who is angry with her mom. Like that was the argument, the style of argument I saw there. That doesn't work in a courtroom. And certainly jurors can't be swayed by that.
No, or him. He can't be either. But I think he's doing a great job of it. His stress level seems fairly low. I always like to watch the person doing the interview as well. Like when you did your the last interview you did with someone who did something they weren't supposed to do, then I like to see if they're stressed, see how that's going. He's handling it pretty well. He's getting a little bit stressed, but she doesn't have him thinking on his feet, trying to figure out what's happening next or anything like that.
Yeah, so. Keith Morrison is pretty much the coolest cucumber they grow.
Yeah.
But I was fascinated by that too. In fact, in the next series of clips, we are going to ask both you and our audience to just keep an eye on Keith as much as they're watching Lori, because I felt for him. This is a guy who always knows his stuff. He knows this trial better than anybody, but I think he's just got this howitzer coming at him that he might not have expected. And I don't think I expected this either. Did you expect from the Lori that you've come to know the Lori that we saw in these clips?
Yes, because
Really?
I understand that personality type. So that they'll defend the ego to the wall. They'll do anything. If she had to start, I'm surprised she didn't start crying and get up and want to leave and all that once you get them backed into a certain position. But the fight before that is incredible that they'll put up. But then when they can't win, then they'll break down and they'll separate themselves from the situation by crying. You can't get to them, by talking to them, and that I don't think that happens here, but I was surprised because he can really go pretty hard on somebody. He's pretty good at that.
Methodically and gently, without appearing aggressive, he can really corner you, and he does it really well. And he cornered her, which gave us the 11-year-old girl fighting with her mom.
Yeah. And he comes in with an air about him is the thing, and starts out he starts out slow talking and looking at you, looking through your soul. So, and he's pretty good at it. He's done it for a long time, and she's not buying it. She's not getting into it.
Yeah, she's very dismissive.
It doesn't change her.
By the way, very rude. That's my perception. Yeah. Should I have had a different reaction? Is it rude to you? Is it as simple as just she's rude?
Oh, it's all, she'll do whatever it takes to, again, I hate to keep going back to protect her ego, or the ego at that point, because nothing can, and that's how that guy got control over in the first place, the religious guy that she met up with. That's the way you do it.
What, stroke your ego?
Oh, big time. Yeah, once you spot that personality type, man, you can fish him on in and get him to do almost anything. You can really get the high-end clinical narcissist if you know how to do it, and you brush the ego certain ways. You can get him to do just about anything that you want him to.
Love bomb.
Yeah.
Just do the love bombing, which is what most cult leaders do, right? They love bomb their members as they're bringing them in, and then slowly start dropping away all the love. And so those members are kind of desperate to return to where it used to be.
Yeah. And you drop off these little breadcrumbs of oxytocin that fires off in their brain by just saying one thing to them, because at one point you're just totally giving all of it. They're just like, yeah, you're the greatest thing in the world. And then one day it just stops, and they're like, wait a minute, I thought I was the greatest person in the world. I don't, what's going on. I don't understand what's happening. And then every now and then they'll drop off a little breadcrumb. They run over there and get that oxytocin buzz. Okay, I'm back. Everything's great. And then he does that to a lot of people, and then you've got followers. In a nutshell, that's the way it's done.
Okay, this next clip is Lori discussing her relationship with Jesus, and, spoiler alert, it is not like the rest of our relationship with Jesus. It's a whole other level. She's also talking about life after death. And the best part, she discusses her relationship with the woman that she's been convicted of murdering. And that would be Chad Daybell's late wife. So let's roll it, Lindsay.
Does Jesus visit you often here?
Jesus visits all of us.
Uh-huh.
He's a very good friend of mine.
Uh-huh.
He loves everybody. I'm just his favorite.
You're his favorite?
No, I'm just teasing. It was a joke. Can I joke with you, Keith? Can we joke?
Yes, of course you
That's
can.
my bumper sticker. I said, if I ever had a bumper sticker, it would say, Jesus loves you, but I'm his favorite. Everyone has a time when they live, and everyone has a time when they're going to go back to home, to heaven.
I see.
So it's kind of the idea of like, you go off to college, learn a bunch of things, have experiences. That's what life is. And then you go home.
No foul play at all, she said. Perfectly innocent.
Tammy died of natural causes.
Uh-huh.
Tammy knows the truth. I love her and she loves me. We've been friends for eternities.
Yes, and nowadays, Tammy comes to visit her in jail, said Lori.
Okay, let's start with the last part. She loves Tammy and Tammy loves her, all present tense, and that Tammy and Lori were the best of pals. First of all, that's absolutely impossible because they didn't even live in the same place. And she seems like so incredibly convinced. What did you see when she was saying that?
Well, let's look at her body language. Let's see what she was doing. Her leg is crossed over, looking completely different set of cues at this point that we've seen up to this point, because she's shut down a little bit. Her leg is crossed. Her arms or her hands are way down as well. And then listen to her voice and look how far down her head is. It comes up some, but not a whole lot. So she's giving all these things all these big things or blanket statements about how they're great friends and they have been for, eternities and all that kind of thing. When you look at it from one point of view, you can say, well, we're looking at schizophrenia, except for the little things she throws in there where you see it's a religious thing, not a schizophrenic. I could be wrong, though. I don't know. Maybe she is schizophrenic as well. The only part of that I see was in right there. But I mean, there's so much going on with her from a psychological perspective.
Yeah, I'll say. But does she believe that she and Tammy are friends? Does it look like she believes that, Tammy loves her and that she loves Tammy, or does it look like she's just trying to lay it on thick?
Well, obviously we know that can't be true, that the girl's still coming to visit her and all that stuff. So I'm under the impression she's laying it on a little too thick, and that's one of the ways she distances everybody from her, because you're talking against her religion and those kind of things. She's mixing, Christianity with whatever it is she's doing. She's talking about Jesus. She's talking about, Jesus loves you, but I'm his favorite. Shoot, that's been around forever. I say that sometimes on our podcast. I'll say that. Because when people start bringing up religion, and you throw that in there to make yourself look smart, but she doesn't understand what that actually means. That he loves everybody, everybody's his favorite. She doesn't get that part of it, which lets us know she's not really. I wouldn't be under the impression she's a true Christian.
Okay, I got a different impression off the top of that soundbite, and I'll tell you, and you tell me if I'm way off based on what you saw.
Okay.
I saw that she was trying to be funny and adorable and have Keith really like her because she's so clever with her jokes and funny. And I felt like she was trying to put herself on an even plane with everybody else, including Keith's friends and colleagues, as opposed to, I am a lowly inmate, a convict, having killed my 2 children and my 5th husband's wife. I feel like she's trying to raise herself above that and be on a one-to-one joking level with Keith.
Yeah, but she's not raising herself that. She's already there. She wants you to believe that too, though. She's trying to convince you what a wonderful person she is, but she's trying to connect with him so they can be friends, so she can have it's easier to defend that, and he won't come at me as hardcore. That's the logic behind that. So that's normal for that personality type as well. Trying to be friends with everybody, and I'm sure in the prison, I don't think they'll. You'd think, I bet she gets along great in there. I wouldn't think there'd be a whole lot of people that like that, because they understand. The thing about people in prisons, they see a lot more than a civilian would out on the street, because they see people at their worst, and they see the worst people at their worst, and they know when somebody's up to something, and that behavior is not normal. and they see it instantly.
It was
So they,
uncomfortable. First of
yeah,
all, again, I put Keith on a level up here, and I look at him as sort of the granddaddy of not just crime reporting, but reporting, and of NBC, royalty, and he deserves deference. He doesn't deserve to have you laughing and joking along as though he's in on all your jokes, and it just made me feel uncomfortable. I noticed a lot that Lori tilts her head a lot, way off to the side. What is that?
well, she's showing her neck, and that's the way she's trying to ingratiate herself, trying to become attractive for him. So again, she can connect. That's very common because she's trying, and listen to how she's talking when she's saying it. She's being all sweet and bubbly and childlike. She's under the impression that she's still like street hot. She can go out and get any guy I want. So when she does that, that's what that's about. She's trying to be attractive to him, and that's one of the ways a child will do it. That's one of the ways that some other women will do that. It's common. They go a little bit and it's normal. But when you do that hard tilt like that, you're going for it.
She's completely unaware that she's wearing Jailhouse orange, purple cuffs, and Crocs.
Exactly.
Let me play this next one. Speaking of uncomfortable, because Keith asks Lori about meeting Chad Daybell, because they met when Chad was married to Tammy, and they only married like 17 days after Tammy died. So you do the math and it's pretty obvious what happened. But he asks her very specifically about that. And she invokes Adele, the, pop queen of pop singing in her answer. And again, it's cringeworthy, but let's look at it. Roll it, Lindsay.
What was the relationship with Chad all about anyway?
My husband?
My
husband that I've been married to for 5 years?
Sure. And everybody calls you Lori Vallow. Does that bother you?
It doesn't bother me, but I'm Lori Daybell.
It was often difficult to keep Lori on point. But on this subject, the wedding and preparations for it, she seemed willing to talk specifics. We had to ask because, again, facts. The evidence clearly shows that Lori searched for wedding dresses and rings and then bought a malachite gemstone ring on October 2nd, 2019. The ring was delivered to her 5 days later, October 7th. But there was a hitch. At the time, Chad's wife Tammy was as alive as a person can be, and quite unaware of the fate that awaited her. She was murdered on October 19th, 2 weeks after Lori's wedding ring was delivered. In journalistic terms, this would be called a gotcha. And you bought the wedding rings.
That is
before.
An untrue statement. You don't know what you're talking about on that one.
It's online. The purchase is there. And then we see the video of those very rings on your fingers and that ceremony on the beach.
Those rings were not initially bought for us. So get your facts straight, Keith, before you start making accusations. See, you don't know.
Who were they bought for?
You don't have any idea because you've heard all these rumors.
You're going to tell me who they were bought for.
Rumor has it.
Who were they bought for, if not you?
Alex and Zulema initially.
That's Lori's brother, Alex Cox, and the woman he would later marry.
I'm here to tell you the truth, and you don't even want to hear it.
Of course I want to hear it.
I don't think you do.
But I want to hear the truth about all kinds of things.
I'm trying to give you the truth, and you really don't want to hear it. So you want the truth want the truth that you already think you know. I'm the person it happened with. I'm the only one who knows the truth. And I'm trying to give it, but if you don't want to hear it, I will be happy to be quiet.
So poor Keith is basically desperate to have her answer his questions. She won't answer his questions, but continues to accuse him of not wanting to listen to her answers. Do I have it in a nutshell?
Yeah, it's where can she go? What can she do? That's all you have at that point. There's in situations when you're asking people questions like that and there is nowhere else to go, but you feel like you have to have an answer, there it is. She could have answered with something small and short and to the point. Him said, no, that's not it. And he could have said, well, yeah, it is. We have it online. I don't know what that is. You could go down that thing. Say, seriously, I have no idea what that is. And shut up. It doesn't get as bad, but you just keep digging this hole. But then again, it's like listening to a younger person argue who doesn't know how to argue, just getting loud. Another thing that was interesting is in the very first part of that interaction there, watch how when she's supposed to be saying yes and no, she has what we call the bobblehead. You have illustrators where you're in confirmation nods. If I were to say, No, I'm not going, that means no, I'm not going. But if I said, no, I'm not going, and my head kept doing that, that's different.
So for the listeners, you're nodding
Oh,
your head up and down,
right.
right? When you say no, I'm not going, by nodding your head up and down.
Right, but I'm nodding them. When I say no, when I hit no, my head is all the way down. So every word is emphasized because it's the way your brain emphasizes specific words and phrases. It's an illustrator. And we saw her head doing the bobblehead thing, going back and forth and up and down. Watch for those little hints of that because that lets you know she's at the same time she's delivering the no, it isn't answer. She's thinking she's got inner dialogue going on that's going against that as she's trying to figure out what's happening. That's one of the ways you catch someone in a lie. When you start breaking the lie down, you get them into that mode. And once they're there, if you know how to do it, you go in and start asking other questions. The whole thing falls apart. He's really close there,
Well,
and she could say, well, I'm not talking to you anymore. That's her threat. I'm just going to
that's
leave.
amazing. Just to think that, they punctuate with their chin going down if they are ending a very, fulsome argument or they're making their point. But you're right. She's bouncing all around, and it makes perfect sense that she's trying to figure out how to fill in the gaps as the story continues out of her mouth. Like it's just, and by the way, that's the other thing off the top of that clip. She sort of was offended by Keith's simple question. Tell me about your relationship with Chad. And she's offended by it, saying, you mean my husband of years? Well, it wasn't even years, but I guess it has been. They are still married. But it was just almost like she put up a defense to a question that didn't require one.
Because the wall has to go up because it's harder to get through that wall to get to other questions. She knows with that question, there's a whole lot more coming. So you put the wall up and it makes it hard to get through. You can't get any further than that. So that's common as well. So I think he did a great job with it for what he's got to work with, in that situation. But there's really not much you can do when you're dealing with that personality type because there's no logic there. It's just protection. Yeah. That's really tough.
She did something else throughout these clips, and as we continue, we can look and see it. She keeps looking off camera as though there's someone else there who she's sharing, the joke with, as though Keith doesn't understand the joke, but whoever off camera is, they and I. Well, we are in on the truth. You're the one who's out of sorts. Does that make sense? I mean, I don't think there was anybody there. I didn't see them in the wide shot anyway. But tell me what your thoughts were about that.
That's you look for approval at that point. Is what's happening there. She's looking for somebody to be going, oh yeah, you're right, girl. You whatever. And she's not, and probably nobody's there. But you're looking for that. You're doing an approval check, is what it's called. We'll do threat checks if we're in a situation where we think someone might hurt us or someone we're not aware of yet. We'll look around, count a little bit. Our eyes will dart as we check for threats. So she's checking for approval to make sure. And plus it makes him feel weird. So the goal is to make them feel weird. Like, look, we all think this too. So, which I don't think that's not going to happen in that situation.
Yeah, it's real palpable. Once you seize on it, you can't stop looking at who exactly are you looking at, Lori, and who in a prison environment is your friend and believes your story. It's almost like it's a phantom, fake person that she's looking towards, maybe beyond Keith's, his aperture. I don't know, but my Lord, I just kept realizing there's no end to her physicality in how she lies.
Yeah, that's the way they are. Like I said before, out of the gate, it's just the thing, your wall comes up and you just start protecting the ego. So she'll do anything, no matter how small or how large. And you have to make that assessment once you get in there. That's why she opens up with such a big, hey, look at me, everything's going great. And her voice is high and all that, because you're trying to connect with that person and build rapport and be friends with them. Whereas he does a great job because his never really changes much at all. He'll go up a little bit and he'll come a little bit lower and go a little bit stronger when he says, but I just saw that, which everybody does. You look online, there it is. That's the only time his voice really gets a little stronger or his tone changes in the least is during that.
Yeah.
So I think
her histrionics are, they're all over the place during this interview. Yeah. She's offended. She's wants to be adorable all at the same time. And then the Adele moment. I mean, just hearing that Adele imitation. Did that tell you anything, or was it just a throwaway?
No, that's part of the defense. Everything she's doing. The thing that's great about this is we're seeing everything here. You usually don't see this many of these cues and things and these approaches at protection in one shot. I mean, rarely do you see all these in one interview. You'll see a couple of them, but seeing them all bunched together like this, just one after the other, after the other, after the other. That's what's fascinating me about this. And I know other people that, my buddies are like, dude, have you seen this?
Really?
And I hadn't seen it yet. Yeah. And they're like, no, you got to see it. She's doing it all. So,
And it's like a body language buffet.
yeah. Yeah. And she's for the approach she's taken, she's pulling out all the stops. It's almost like an example of how it's done, where you'd stick a bunch of clips of different people together. It's all one person doing everything. She's a one-stop shop.
What's with Lori closing her eyes so much and for so long?
Okay, we're looking at two different situations. In situations where something is bothering her, or he's asking a question she's not into, or refuting what she said, it's called eye blocking, and everybody does it. If you tell a joke where you are at work, and some guy comes in and starts telling a really graphic joke, and there's women around, you'll see guys close their eyes or cover their eyes, that kind of thing. So it's eye blocking at its basic level. And then you have the part where when she does it, she closes her eyes, but then bats her eyes. And that goes back to the part where her head leans sideways, and she's trying to seem attractive to him. So those are two very common things you see. You got to keep an eye out for when you're interrogating somebody.
What does eye blocking tell you, though, about if she's talking and she's closing her eyes? What is it telling you about what she thinks of her story?
And every person will be different, because some people do it naturally. They'll look at you with their eyes closed, and they'll look away with their eyes open. They'll look at you and talk with their eyes closed. That's one thing. But if you've been acting, if your behavior has been where your eyes are open the whole time, and then you start saying something like that, it may be something that you're afraid of the blowback from what they're going to say, or you may not. What you're saying, may be offensive, and you really don't want to say it, but you're saying it anyway. In her case, though, I think she's hearing things or covering things she doesn't agree with or that offend her.
Okay.
Yes.
Would she be one of your teaching examples?
Yeah, this will be. After all, as I'm saying this, that's why I'm having inner dialogue, thinking, I got to pull this and show it this specific.
I noticed you looking away.
Clips here. Yeah, because I'm thinking about that. So, yeah.
Okay, so this next clip, I love this because Keith is asking about her parenting style, which shouldn't even be called parenting. She acknowledges the deaths of her kids, and she repeats this story. Weird story that just came out of the ether, that she had a near-death experience while giving birth to Tylee. By the way, as we watch this, just know nobody else knows anything about this. None of her friends ever said, yeah, she had a near-death experience giving birth. Yeah, she was in the hospital. Her whole family. No, nobody has any information about a near-death experience giving birth to Tylee. But you know what? This is Lori's story. So let's roll it, Lindsay.
I never spank my children.
Fine.
I don't yell at my children.
Fine.
I only use love and logic with my children, right? I want to build them up. I want to help them because of what I learned in heaven. Tylee's very smart, very sassy. She knows how to push your buttons. She knows what to say.
Gotcha.
I was able to be very peaceful with Tylee. I was able to be patient with Tylee because I watched her suffer so much.
All right.
Okay. And I knew she was not going to live forever. Because you know that you can die of pancreatitis anytime you have it.
Of course, yes.
She had it every
He claimed that giving birth to Tylee actually killed her, briefly, sent them both straight to heaven, before Jesus asked her to return to life on earth.
When I saw Tylee in heaven, before she was born, she knew she was going to come have all these difficult things, and she was still giddy with excitement about coming to earth and fulfilling her mission.
Meanwhile, Lori dodged questions about the wreckage in her own life.
We have Tylee, we have
Yes.
JJ,
Yes.
we have Chad's wife, we have the attempted murder on Brandon, we have, there's a lot of
to my
mayhem.
life. There's a lot to my life.
Sure.
If you want to hear the actual explanations, I'm here.
There's a
But
big,
it
long
doesn't sound
explanation.
like you really want a lot
I
of the
do,
actual,
but I just-
explanations.
I don't have all week to hear all these
Well, it's
explanations.
going to take a long time, so it's probably going to take more than one session.
Uh-huh.
That, the sheriff's office told us, was not a possibility.
Oof, there she is again, arguing you don't want to hear when all Keith is begging for, is to hear. I was interested, Scott, at the beginning. She talks about her kids in present tense.
Oh yeah. Well, because she's already stated that they're all, in other words, they're still alive, but not on Earth and all that. She's got to maintain that thing where there's another place where we all still are, and still, her version of heaven, whatever that is, and how we're all still alive, and it'll come back to we're all one and all that. But you're right. Usually, or quite often, someone will talk about somebody that they've killed, and they'll talk about him in the past tense, even though the body hadn't been found yet. And they're pretending like they don't know.
Yeah, that's usually one of the first clues is they talk about past tense, which made me wonder, once again, is she so, I want to say incompetent, that she does not understand what is going on? She truly thinks these kids are alive because she's not even trying to lie when she's talking in present tense. It's coming out organically.
Yeah, I don't. I think she knows they're dead. I think she knows they're not coming back. I think she knows she's never going to see him again because she did that to him.
Mm.
And she could say all you want to say about now. They've got heaven. That's once you die, if you're a Christian, under the impression that there is something like that. But I don't think the person that made that happen for somebody else is going to be too well. They may have a tough time getting in there and hanging out with everybody.
You just made me think. You make a really good point. When we talk about people in heaven, we say he is in heaven, meaning present tense. We talk about people in present tense. If that's how you refer to someone who's in the afterlife, you use present tense, don't you?
I do. If I'm talking about my father with my family. If I'm talking about it with somebody else, I don't. So, but it depends on the situation. I don't walk around the house saying, Dad likes the coffee I'm having. He likes that too. Not that kind of thing. But I don't know how to explain it. But as you're saying that, I remember a couple of times I've been in that position and said, put him in the present tense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. If you're talking with others, you face reality. And then when you're talking with your family, you refer to Dad's watching over us right now. He would be laughing. I'm sure he's laughing or he's rolling in his grave. It's all, I hadn't thought of that. So this next clip is Lori being asked about Chad labeling her own children dark, as in zombies, and he really puts it to her. Did she watch her children die? But watch the answers and how she dances through and overspeaks him. And I want to ask you about that. Let's roll it, Lindsay.
You want to go on later and say, Lori told me this in your ominous voice, but really this is what happened. Are you going to do that to me, Keith?
Ominous voice?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe that one.
Yes. That's the exact voice that I'm talking about.
Why did Chad label your children dark and then,
that is all.
Call them zombies? You're saying that didn't happen?
Did you hear him say that?
Well, no, but others did.
I didn't.
Oh, I see. But that would be a pattern that he would label people dark and then they would either die or somebody would have an attempt on their life.
No, that's the narrative that you've been running.
The evidence showed that Tylee was killed the night they returned from Yellowstone, September 8th, 2019. And JJ was killed 14 days later.
No, that's not accurate. Sorry, it's not the truth. You asked me for the truth. You're asking me personally, the only person on the earth who really knows, and you're shaking your head no, like that didn't happen.
Did I shake my head?
Yeah, you're shaking your head a little bit.
No, I'm just looking at you. I'm quoting what the court said about you and Chad, that you
go ahead and quote it.
Actually conspired to kill these people.
And
were you there when
I was falsely accused? I was falsely
Let me ask you directly.
convicted, and I will be exonerated.
All right, fine. Were you there the night that Tylee died? Were you there the night that JJ died?
Was
where? Alex in these places when they died? In the place where they died, were you there?
What place was that?
Did you watch?
What place was that?
Do
you have any idea?
I'm asking.
Well, I'm the only one that knows. Do you know? You're pretending like you know.
It doesn't matter. I'm not pretending I know. I'm asking you a question. Did you watch your children die?
That's a really sad question.
It's a terrible question, and it's one I hate to have to ask. But I mean, we've been talking about all of
I
these.
was not there, as you know. I told Colby.
You did not kill a soul.
Absolutely
You didn't
not.
participate in killing a soul.
No.
You didn't conspire to kill a soul.
Correct.
You didn't do any of those things you've been convicted of doing.
Correct.
What to make of Lori?
My next question would have been, okay, Lori, you're telling me you didn't see them die. You're telling me you weren't there when either of them died. But at the beginning of this clip, you just said my facts were wrong, that they died on this specific date and that specific date. And Lori was so adamant, nope, that is not true. You don't even know. You're just following the narrative. And then she goes on to admit, well, I don't think it's an admission, but she goes on to say, I wasn't there to see it all. So it's just completely contradictory.
Yeah. And he does if you watch him there where he is quiet and she gets after him for shaking his head, that's hard to do. When you ask somebody a question, they start in and you see something go wrong, it's hard to be quiet, man. It's so tough sometimes. He does a really good job of keeping quiet and letting her talk. So I think that was fairly impressive, I thought, there, because you can look at it and go, oh, okay, yeah, he just wouldn't. But it really is tough not to jump in and go, hey, man, what about this? And he's not doing that, which I thought was pretty potent.
But the level of her obfuscation is just like stratospheric.
Well, there's so many things going on in here. It's really fantastic. There's one part where once he asks her if she's the one that killed the kid or the children, then you hear what's called fading facts, where as she's talking, she gets quieter toward the end because your brain's saying, "Man, you shouldn't be saying this. This isn't right. This isn't
Is that
true."
what that means? Like she regrets the minute she starts opening her mouth? Is that what you say when you say fading?
Fading facts. She doesn't regret it. She just knows she shouldn't be doing it, but it's got to be done. So it's like punching your husband or your kid or your mother. Let's say punching your mother would really be hard to do. You just barely hit her. Same kind of thing. If you're going to, if law says you have to punch your mother, then you're going to go up and just barely tap her. That's what's happening as she's saying that. She doesn't want to say it, but she's got to say it. And so as she's talking, it gets quieter at the end.
Fading facts? Is that what you called it?
Fading facts. Yeah.
It's fascinating. By the way, just so everyone knows, as she's, refuting everything, there are actual emails between her and Chad labeling JJ and Tylee as dark spirits, So when she demands, you don't know that, they found the emails between them. So for sure, Chad did say it. And she was the recipient of that information. Okay, so this next clip, this one's probably one of my favorites. Apart from the fact that last clip, you saw her, again, looking off camera so often to this imaginary friend, this imaginary ally, as though she had a teammate that was supporting her. It was nutty. But this last clip is one of my favorites because she tells Keith that she and Chad, who's on death row, are going to be exonerated and freed. And that she has big, big plans for what she's going to do when she walks out of prison one day. So let's roll it, Lindsay.
What's it like acting as your own lawyer?
It's great, actually. It's a difficult thing to do. You have to have your arguments, I think this judge in particular has been pretty patient in letting people get their whole argument out.
I can see where he might need to be.
Yeah.
Chad was convicted and he's on death row now.
I understand that, yeah.
But
They have some fascinating stories.
How could you possibly think that Chad would be exonerated after what happened?
The same way I will be exonerated. We will both be exonerated in the future.
Because?
I have seen things in the future that Jesus showed me when I was in heaven.
Uh-huh.
And we were not in jail. And we were not in prison. And they were still in the future from now.
Very good at dancing.
And we should do a little jig.
You've already done a mental jig with your stories.
After I get exonerated, maybe I'll go on Dancing with the Stars and you can come.
Sure, okay, fine.
Okay.
And then?
All right, I guess our time is up.
Apparently it's up, yep.
Half the time, I'm laughing over here because she doesn't get the joke. Like so often, Keith, like, I'm doing a mental jig, and she doesn't seem to get the joke that the joke's on her.
Yeah, that's too bad. And the mixing again, I don't think Jesus is known for showing you the future. If he shows up, it's a pretty big deal. He usually sends somebody else to have a talk with you.
Yeah.
Before,
like an archangel,
if somebody's going to show up. Yeah. So And those,
Oh.
so that's, I don't know. It's just, I don't want to get into the religious mixture of all that, but wow.
But I mean, what's interesting about it is that for those who are listening and watching who are religious, I think that they are taking deep offense to this because
I am.
she's twisted, their beauty to fit her murderous actions and to, try to dominate a guy who's calling her out for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think now this is going to sound horrible. This is the way I would talk if I was hanging out with my friends. If Jesus was going to show up, he would either show up now or during this, or he would send somebody to show up. And that who he would send would not be this kind. Everybody's under the impression that angels are these kind, precious things that show up. Think about when they first show up, what are the first few words that they say every time?
Tell
4
me.
words.
What is it?
Do not be afraid, because they're gangsters, man. When they show up, it's pretty hard.
I thought they said do not
happening.
be afraid because it's so unusual and people can't believe what they're seeing. And their first inclination would be, what is this? I'm terrified.
Well, if he can send one of those to defeat an army of 185,000 soldiers in a night, then they got to be gangsters. I mean, they got to be, when you first see them, it's like, oh my God. I'm sure there are different kinds, or different types. But the ones that go out in the field that you call up, go, hey, will you take care of this for me? You got it. I'm going. And they go down and do that. That's why they say that when they show up every time.
She's got the blind faith. She's got the blind faith that they'll protect her and no one else, right? Because she's his favorite. Remember, she's Jesus's favorite. What about just her demeanor in talking about, I will be exonerated, I will be freed? It felt to me like she wasn't trying to put one over on Keith. It felt to me like she really believes this.
Oh, well, then again, there you deal with that personality type, the histrionic personality type. And it's starting to sound a little schizophrenic. There's so much going on in there. It's easy to go, man, she's crazy. But there's so many things going on in there. I'm sure the people who did the diagnostic on her were just like, I'm sure they were calling each other afterwards and going, you got to check this out. I've got one. Not that
I need a cigarette.
New.
I need a smoke break.
Right. Not that this is new. There are a lot of people like this. But when you see that in person, and it's hard not to get offended and be defensive against them. That's what she's used to. There's people button heads with her, because when you meet a person at that level of that personality type, you usually don't get along with them. Even though at first you may, because you say, oh, they're really nice. But then after a while, it goes away. And
they play you. In the beginning, they play you. They love bomb you too,
Yeah.
So can I just ask you, in your line of work, put Lori Vallow on a scale of 1 to 10. And I know we instantly want to go 10, but my question is more about with the number of issues that present in how she speaks. I mean, we all have little tells or little lies, and lots of murderers will show something in their conversations. But with what you see from her, the number of sheer, tells that she gives you, with all the different science that you study, where does she fit on that scale?
Well, let me say this about that. We could take this almost sentence by sentence and break this down and go, oh, each one of those sections, we've looked at 3 or 4 in one. We could take 4 and take the first half of that one, then take the second half. We could spend weeks doing this, because there's so much happening there. Because from a neurological perspective, you can see when things fire off in her head and things happen. Like, for example, when she's doing the one shoulder shrug and then her chin goes toward it, we know that usually suggests that the person is being dishonest. They're being deceptive. When she has the fading facts, these things are happening just bang, 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 bang. And we could break all those down section by section. So it's one of those things where she's a good study. She'll be the study of her, quote unquote, will be around for a long time. She'll be internet famous for a long time, because she'll be one of the classics that everybody goes back to and looks at. Mark my words.
Kids going into criminal justice are going to be seeing this in their classes in the future, if not now.
Oh yeah. And people who are into true crime and all that, they'll be looking at this as well. She's going to be one of the all-stars of this. A lot of people will call her a psychopath. Like I said, I've never talked to her. I don't know if she is or not, but she has a whole lot of the traits of a psychopath. If you were to go down the Hare psychopathy checklist, boy, she sure checks a bunch of them off. So she's that's questionable. It could take a year to diagnose someone as a psychopath, but she's getting close. in there.
Scott, you are amazing. Thank you so much for this. I have so much more insight, and I feel like my gut was on point when I watched that interview.
You want me to tell you why?
Yeah, why?
It is? Okay. Well, and take this the right way. It's because you're a woman. Men's brains and women's brains are different. Men's brains take in information, all the superficial stuff really quickly. We make the decision, and we have what's called our gut feeling. That's why we think we know everything, because it comes to us so quickly. And women, what they do is their brain is set up differently and takes information in these big chunks, huge chunks, right? And there's a part of the brain called the fusiform gyrus, and it collects all the little things it sees when someone's moving, not just people, but other movements, situations, those kind of things. So it takes in these big chunks of information from the fusiform gyrus. Then you have the mid-temporal gyrus that's right along in here. That takes into consideration, it grabs all the big stuff, all the big movements and things people say. Then it throws it back to this thing in the back of your head called the locus ceruleus down there at the base of the brain. And the locus ceruleus gets all that information and starts sorting through it. And as it's sorting through it, it takes a while. For men, it doesn't take long at all. Like I said, we know everything, and this is why. And we have a gut feeling. But the locus ceruleus, the way it goes through the information, sieves through it all, that's what gives you all, and I say you all because women have woman's intuition. That's why it's so potent. It's the most famous superpower. That's why you see things before we do. And I'll tell you, I've never done an interrogation, or done an interview and interrogation where that person was going to go away forever, and without having a woman watch that as well. Not telling her, hey, watch this and make sure. I just say, will you sort of keep an eye on this and just see what's going on here? Yeah, okay. And then I go in there.
That's amazing.
Yeah, what are you seeing? Anything I'm not seeing? Here's what I think. Here's why I think. And you can get a lot from that. Sounds crazy, but women can spot that stuff. That's why so many women are into true crime, because they see this stuff and men are like, yeah, I see what you say. But you all can see it much better and much more quickly and much more in detail and depth than we can. Sorry about the rant.
And that is why I'm so thrilled that you as a man and I as a woman am having this conversation, because I think it really filled in a lot of gaps. Thank you so much for this.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I have to say that whenever I do an interview with Scott, and I do interview him a lot on my News Nation show at 10 p.m. Eastern, check it out. I always learn so much more than I already felt I knew, but he puts like a science to it, which makes me feel better about my sneaking suspicions or my women's intuition. I don't know if you got the same feeling as I did, but if you were listening to this as a podcast, I highly recommend you check it out on YouTube, because Scott did a lot of things, like he was acting out a lot of the actions of Lori. And I think you like Scott's business is watching people, right? So I think if you watch our interview, you may get a lot more out of it as well. So just check it out on YouTube, Drop Dead Serious, easy to find. And you can see all of our episodes on YouTube as well. Full video, pictures, all sorts of great stuff. I'm so thankful that you're part of this community. I think that oftentimes a headline is just not enough, right? Not only is it not enough, it's not always that informative. And I think that, talking through some of these stories, that as they develop, we actually come up with new theories, new concepts, and new understanding, which is why I think this kind of a platform is so important. Please do me a favor and subscribe. I love it. I love hearing that you are part of this community permanently. I like hearing what you have to say. So leave your comments and your suggestions too. Tell me what you like, what you didn't like, and what you want me to look at. What other cases you want me to look at as well. I'm always happy to do that. And when you subscribe, you also get the notifications, because I just drop little Easter eggs all the time. We do some new episodes and little bonus episodes and content all the time. So if you're a subscriber, you're going to get a notification. That doesn't always happen just on the Thursday mornings when we drop every week. And also, give me the review. Like I said, even if it's bad, I do like to hear what you have to say. For the YouTube viewers, I would love to hear your comments in the comment section. Without question, I read them. We take into account what you say. We are a true crime community, and everybody has a good point to make. So I do love that. I always love when you follow me on social media as well. I'm on all of them: Instagram, YouTube, X, Facebook. You can find me there at Drop Dead Serious. You can also find me at Ashleigh Banfield and at TV Ashleigh. Love, love, love hearing what you have to say in those comments. And we do put some additional content out on social media as well. So thank you again for being a part of this. We'll see you again in a week. Until that time, my friends, please remember that the truth is not just serious. It is drop dead serious.